Hey everyone, so I want to talk about One Piece chapter 896, The Last Request. Now, I thought this chapter was great. I really want to get to the meat of it, which was, of course, Luffy versus Katakuri, the conclusion of that fight. I have a lot I want to say about that, but before we get into it, let's just talk real quick about what happened at the beginning of this chapter. So, we start with a kind of a sweet send-off between Sanjay and Pudding. I don't think that this is the end of their story, just because we know that the Straw Hats are going to fight the Big Mom Pirates again, somewhere down the line. Luffy says as much later in the chapter, right before Katakuri goes down. But I think, at least at the moment, Oda's putting a pin in their relationship. Pudding just has one last request, which is a kiss. She takes the cigarette out of Sanjay's mouth. The panel pans away to somewhere else, but we know what happened. Now, beyond that, what I think is really interesting that Oda's been doing is trying to hype up and make really clear to the reader just how insane, how big of a feat it is what Luffy's about to accomplish, which is busting into a Yonku's territory, grabbing some poneglyphs, knocking out a couple commanders on the way, and then getting out. We have Monteoro even explicitly saying that the Pirate King Gold Roger himself could come out of that mirror, and there's no way he would survive. So what Luffy's about to do is unprecedented, it's unheard of, it's unthinkable. And Big News Morgans is there, so we know for a fact that this is going to be making the papers. And what's interesting is that this means that Luffy is probably going to be one of the biggest topics of discussion at the upcoming Reverie. And what's a kind of a fun fact is that if you go back to the first Reverie that we ever see in the series, this was during a flashback during Drum Kingdom. During that Reverie, the first time we get to take a look at it, the guy that's being talked about there is Dragon. And they're basically talking about how, well, this guy Dragon, he's not a big threat now, but he's going to be a big threat to the world at large pretty soon, and he's kind of gaining momentum. So what's cool is the first Reverie we get to see in the series is about Dragon, and now in this upcoming Reverie that we're going to get to see in real time, it's going to be about Luffy. So that's kind of a cool father-son parallel that Oda thought up, I don't know how many years ago. Now, really I want to talk about Luffy and Katakuri and how that fight ended, because there's just so much that you can dive into there. Who won the fight? Let's start with that. I would say, if I have to give it to one person, I think Luffy officially wins the fight. It's technically his win. He's the one walking away from it. He's the one who's accomplished his goal of beating Katakuri and getting back to his crew, right? So technically it's a Luffy win. But if you go underneath that, like, why did it play out the way it did? Why did Katakuri go down in the end? And why was Luffy still standing? So, I think this battle was the greatest, most explicit battle of wills that we've seen in the entire series, right? One Piece, at the end of the day, most conflicts come down to willpower. Can your drive match the opponent's drive to win and surpass it? And usually that's the deciding factor at the end of the day. And in this fight, we saw that 100%. We saw these guys taking injury after injury, blow after blow. We saw them pushing themselves for hours and hours on end, basically going far above and beyond their limits, and neither of them are refusing to budge an inch. So it's an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And it really was a battle of wills. So the key is that this was not about strength. Luffy did not win because he's stronger than Katakuri. From what we saw in their final clash, where they both hit each other, strength-wise, they're about equal. They both go down at pretty much the same time, right? It's not about strength. This was a fight that was determined by will. Let's backtrack a little bit. So what was Luffy's will this entire fight? What was he aiming to do? Luffy's will was, I need to beat Katakuri, get past him, and get back to my crew. I have to do that. There's no other option. That was Luffy's will. Katakuri's will was basically like, as the second eldest brother, as the top sweet commander, I'm the guy. It's my duty to make sure that this person who I identify as a threat, I have to crush him right here and now. I have to stop this budding threat in its development before it ever becomes a potential problem for Big Mom later down the line. So that's my duty. I have to do that. That's my will. So those are the two conflicting wills. I have to get past this guy, and I have to stop this guy, right? Now, let's take a moment to think about Big Mom and the Big Mom Pirates as a whole for a second. Is Big Mom a good mother? No. She's killed 2 of her kids this arc. She's gonna kill Perospero if she doesn't get the cake that she wants. And she shows little to no respect for her children. Even to Katakuri, she was calling him a lowly son back when he was trying to defend her during the Tea Party. Right? We've seen that her daughters, Chiffon and Praline, they're quick to side with their new husbands as soon as they get away from their mother. I feel like it's pretty clear at this point that there's not a lot of love for Big Mom among the Charlotte family. It's Katakuri's duty to kind of uphold this system that they've got going and to protect Big Mom because she is his mother. But I really doubt that Katakuri loves his mother. Now, what has Katakuri been seeing over the course of this fight? At first, he sees Luffy as this guy who might potentially one day become a threat to Big Mom, right? But from the very start, he's saying, Luffy, you're far below my level, you're nowhere near me. Eventually, he's like, okay, this guy's my equal. He's progressed to become my equal in a very short span of time. And then over time, he's starting to see, well, this guy can see the future the way I do. This guy is fast enough in Gear 4 to, like, hit me and stuff. Like, he starts to see how quickly Luffy is progressing and just how extraordinary Luffy is to be able to match him blow for blow, will for will, the way that he's been doing this entire fight. And it's gotten to the point where they're both so far past his limits, Katakuri's seeing that Luffy still isn't going down, and it's kind of dawning on him just how exceptional this man is. And so Katakuri asks Luffy, like, if you get past me, will you really one day come back here and beat Big Mom? And Luffy says with absolute certainty, like there's no doubt in his mind that, yes, of course I'll come back here and beat Big Mom. I'm going to be the Pirate King. And he says it as though he's practically seen the future himself. And that moment changes everything. Because suddenly it's no longer, well, this is a guy that one day might become a threat to Big Mom. I should cut that out pretty quick. It becomes, to Katakuri, a clear, crystal clear realization that, alright, if this guy gets past me, there's not a shadow of doubt, it's 100% guarantee that he is one day going to beat Big Mom. That happens no matter what. If Luffy gets past me, then one day he brings an end to Big Mom's tyrannical rule, and that changes everything. Basically, it's like, up till now, it was my duty no matter what, I cannot let this guy pass. In that moment, upon hearing that answer after asking that question, Katakuri's will to stop Luffy probably becomes just the tiniest bit conflicted. I'm not saying Katakuri took a dive. I'm not saying he's like, oh, I'll let Luffy pass because I want him to beat Big Mom later. It's more complicated than that. Think about it like this. It's two guys who have pushed themselves way past their physical limits. The only reason they're able to still stand and fight is because of will. That's all that's keeping them going at this point. Right? And we see that throughout the fight, Luffy's basically saying, there's no other option. I'm getting past you and leaving, getting back to my crew. There's no other option. Nothing else exists. That's definitely happening. Katakuri's saying, you're not getting out of here. There's no other option. You die here. There's no other reality where you get out of here. That's my will. That's what's happening for sure. As we see Luffy crawling out of the hole, he's still believing in that absolute certainty that, what do I have to do? I have to get out of the hole. I have to get out of the mirror world. It's nearly 1 a.m. I have to get back to the crew. There's no other option. I have to do this. We get to Katakuri, and he's no longer saying, there's no other option. He's no longer saying, there's no way you get out of here. He's actually asking the question, well, if you get out of here, what happens? At that moment, Luffy still has his will absolutely dead set in what he's going to do. He's going to beat Katakuri and get out of here. In this moment, Katakuri's will is wavering for a moment as he's considering the possibility of what happens when Luffy gets out of here and what could potentially happen when Luffy comes back and beats Big Mom. And in that moment, Katakuri is not as resolute as Luffy. If they're both just standing at the moment through willpower, then the moment that Katakuri's will wavers just for a moment, the fight's over. He goes down, he's no longer standing. And I think Oda captures basically what this entire fight was about. It was about two equals, both just driven by willpower. The moment one of them starts to consider, well, what if this guy got past me? Then the fight's over. You can't keep standing past your physical limits if you're at that point, right? So it's not that Katakuri's will was weaker than Luffy's in the end. It's that he had a realization of who Luffy is, what Luffy will do in the future, a realization that maybe it's not that bad, and kind of that change in mentality did weaken his will, but it's for a different reason. And I would even go a step further to say, the title of the chapter is The Last Request. Think about it like this. We think that it's about Pudding and Sanji, but we know that the majority of the chapter was about Luffy and Katakuri. Oda likes to do this thing sometimes where a chapter title has double meanings. He did that with the Heart and Child. There was a chapter called Heart and Child at the end of Dressrosa, or Parent and Child called at the end of Dressrosa. And in it seemed like it was about Kiros and Rebecca at the beginning. But at the end, we see that it's about the Straw Hat Crew and the Straw Hat Grand Fleet starting. So, the parent Straw Hat Crew and the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. So there's kind of a double meaning in that chapter. in that chapter title. I think we kind of get the same thing here. Pudding's last request to Sanjay was for a kiss, but what about between Luffy and Katakuri, which is what the bulk of the chapter was about? When Katakuri is standing and asking Luffy, are you really going to come back here and beat Big Mom? I think it can be interpreted as the last request, the unspoken last request was, look, this fight's over. I see what you are. I see what you're going to do. Last request is, you're going to beat Big Mom, right? Luffy's like, yeah. Katakuri's like, all right. And that's it. That's the end of the fight. It's not about who's stronger. It's about whose will, whose desire to beat the other person was greater in the end. And it was Luffy's. And I think a really nice last touch was that, Katakuri finally, only just now does he finally fall down on his back. Remember at the beginning of the chapter when he goes down, he actually falls face forward. So maintaining that idea that he's not a guy who's ever going to be caught resting, like lying flat on his back. But after all of this, he's reached like a satisfying conclusion to his fight with Luffy. He's okay with what's happening next. He falls back down on his back. And then a nice gesture from Luffy where he's taking off his second hat and putting it over Katakuri's mouth as a gesture of respect, covering his opponent's one sign of shame. So I really like the conclusion of this fight. I think it captured the idea of what was going on really well. And people were saying like, well, it makes no sense that Luffy's stronger than Katakuri, etc., etc. He really wasn't clearly in the end. It was more so whose will held up throughout the entire battle, and that was Luffy's. At the end of the chapter, we had a new character named Nozoms come up. I'm sure we'll learn more about him going forward. And next chapter, I'm looking forward to Sanjay beating up Oven. I really believe that's what's going to happen. I think that Germa are actually going to pop up as well, just to give a hand in that, because they did say earlier that they're going to be showing up at Cacao Island. And I don't see Sanjay clearing up this whole crew by himself. So all these guys surrounding the mirror at the moment, I think we're going to see Sanjay beating up, getting a nice little fight with Oven to show what he's really got. The Germa cleaning up the rest of the people around there, and then grabbing Luffy and kind of skywalking out of there. I don't think they're going to be dealing with that whole fleet that's surrounding them. I think it's more of a in and out, grab Luffy, fly out kind of situation. So, we'll see.